We about to make a movie. Ooh-wee!
People of the internet, welcome to the R.E.B.E.L podcast. As always, my name is Arii.grove, RII.grove. You know where you can find me. And today we have...
Hi guys, my name is Kelsi Schnitter. I am a dance instructor here in Portland and I do a lot of community work. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So where are you from?
I was originally born in Kansas City, Missouri, but I was adopted, so I lived there for 10 days, and then I've been out here forever. I grew up in Southwest Portland and also in Beaverton, and then, kind of drifted off into the hip-hop scene and have been building my reality for a while.
Nice. Were you ever able to get back in touch with your adopted parents?
Yeah, actually, I went... October 2019, I went and visited a family in Vegas. We all kind of linked up. It was my Aunt Carrie and her husband and their son. And I got to know them. It was good. It was needed. It kind of like filled some holes, you know what I mean, that had been missing my whole childhood because not like being adopted was great, and my adopted parents were amazing. They provided us with amazing opportunities, and that's why I am the way I am now. But meeting them was great because you grow up feeling like there's a piece of you missing because you don't know, you know? So to be able to talk to them and figure out who I am and where I came from was really good.
That's awesome. So did it give you a better understanding of yourself?
Most definitely. Yeah, most definitely.
That's great. So what got you into dance? What made you want to think like, all right, I can move?
Yeah. So my mom put me in a dance class. It was like jazz, ballet, tap combo at Garden Home Rec Center when I was 4. And I loved it, like the aesthetic of being in the room and in front of the mirrors and like, you know, just in ballet shoes and tap shoes was great, and I fell in love with it. It's why I am the way I am now. Dance has shaped my entire reality.
It's great to hear a good experience, because for me, I've seen a lot of like negative things come out of like young women that have joined like dancing. Like I hear a lot of like bad stories about young women like having to think about their bodies so crucially from such a young age, and I don't know if that's your experience, if you can talk about that.
I mean, so I've been a bigger person my entire life. I love my body. It's taken me a long time to love my body. But yeah, like you definitely like a lot of dance instructors want skinny dancers on stage. They want to fit like a certain picture for what they like. So, you know, I went through a lot of different weight loss journeys as a child, and what it came down to at the end of the day was I just need to love myself, you know? And so, like, when I teach the kids that I teach nowadays, it's all, like, body positivity, body awareness, understanding that you do have the power to control what you consume, what you eat. But at the same time, just love yourself and get up and dance anyways. You know, be terrified to get on stage, but do it fucking anyways.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you feel pressure from your instructors when you were young to fit into that stereotype?
Yeah, I did, and I tried. You know, I mean, there was times when I would get put on diets and I'd lose a lot of weight, and I would fit the narrative of what they were looking for. But yeah, you can't. That's not realistic to live your life like that. And being a kid, honestly, I have so much respect for my leaders and my mentors that taught me dance. But it was a lot of pressure, and it was kind of traumatizing, to be honest. You know, you want to be able to love yourself, and you feel so good when you're dancing in front of a mirror. But to have somebody tell you you're not good enough because you don't fit or look like what you're supposed to look like as a dancer is traumatizing. You know, you just love yourself. You want to get out there and do what you love. But to have that it's weird. It was a weird energy growing up. But yeah, you know, no shame at all.
Well, I mean, I think it's awesome that you ended up embracing really who you are and like your body image, because it's like, you know, God, it's just I talk about my girlfriend about that a lot, because she did dance when she was a kid, and it's a lot similar experience to yours, you know, just trying to like fit into that mold and all that stuff.
I mean, a lot of my dancer friends are choreographers, or they're teaching at the rec centers or the dance studios, or they're out there doing, you know, professional showcases and stuff like that. So yeah, I got very lucky that I was able to grow up in a professional dance world, I went to Arts and Communications Magnet Academy for high school. And there I got 4 years of training of ballet, tap, jazz, modern. I mean, it was straight training. Like I would go to school, we would take classes at school, and it was professional training all day. So that shaped me, but it also led me to know people that are going to continue doing that stuff, and they have. So it's been cool.
So what was it like being put into such a professional atmosphere at such a young age? Do you feel like that kind of took away from your kid experience, or no?
No, nope. I loved every minute of it. I actually, so kind of on a side note, I did synchronized swimming for 8 years, and I started when I was 7. And I mean, we got to a point where we got to go to the U.S. Open, like,
Wow.
the tryouts for the Olympics.
That's awesome.
And we did that in Seattle, and I did that when I was, 10, and I think also 12 or 13. So that was a professional opportunity that I got to have at a young age. I don't know. I've always appreciated every professional opportunity. It always leads you to different things. So.
So from what it sounds like, then when you got out of high school, you jumped into doing dance in like a professional.
Yeah, I actually taught for 2 years at Garden Home Rec Center and Conestoga Rec Center out in Beaverton. So I taught there for 2 years, and then my life shifted. And I worked in a kitchen for a couple years, and then I had a baby when I was 21. So that took up a portion of my life, raising him and making sure that he was solid. And when he turned 4 years old, I decided that I was going to start my own dance team. I hadn't been doing anything, stay-at-home mom. I ended up getting a job at Portland Swimwear, worked there. I read this book called You Are a Badass. And reading that book it opened my eyes to a lot of things, just kind of professional development, understanding that you have the worth and the drive to be able to do what you want to do if you choose. So I was reading that literally while I was working there, and quit my job, started my own dance team in Northeast Portland in 2016. And yeah, it's just led to me to all these great opportunities all over the city. Met Bren Boy off of social media, and he hit me up one day and asked me if I would help creative direct the dance scenes in his R.E.B.E.L video. And I was terrified, honestly, because I had never gotten an opportunity like that before, but got to go do that, and it just shifted again. And yeah, it's been beautiful. It's been a great ride.
That's great, and you never know where things are gonna take you, right? Because Brent Boy talked about how when you finally end up performing on the news, it's like then things take on like a whole nother aspect. Like, what was that like?
Yeah, that was amazing. That was a busy time because it was like we performed on the news, and the next day we were on the Roseland Theater stage doing the Andre Nicotina show, opening that. Beautiful, amazing experience, and it's relieving to know that there are people that will trust you enough to go through that process with them, and then at the end of it all, you look back and you're like, holy crap, I got to dance on the Roseland Theater stage, 26 years old. After going through this whole dance career, I finally get to this point where I get to do this. Amazing. I think 2 years before I had that experience, I went to CE40 on that stage, and I was like looking at the stage and the lighting and the people. I was like, I gotta get up there. I want to dance up there, And I think that's how it's always been. I prefer being on stage versus being in the audience, and yeah.
So that first shift was having your child. Was that the start of that, or was there something else that like led into that?
I think having my kiddo it kind of gave me a break, honestly. I was at a point where I didn't know what I wanted to do. You kind of go through that, at least I did. I went through that funky little stage between the age of 19 and 21 where I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was just kind of doing everything, and then got to a point where, after having my son, I just was kind of bored, I guess. I've always been, I got to get up and go. I'm on a mission. I got things to do. I feel like between 19 and 24, I kind of went back to sleep, if that makes sense. I lost track of what I'm here to do for the planet and for humanity. I was just focused on raising my baby, and that was great. But, you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm looking at my life like this. Where do I want it to be in the next 5 years? And that's when all that shift kind of got pushed. The minute I turned 25, like on my 25th birthday, at midnight, I had a weird kind of eureka moment. And I was sitting on the steps of somebody's apartment complex, and there was some girls that were like talking shit in the corner. And I was sitting there like, do I want to continue surrounding myself with people who are kind of motivated? Or do I want to remove myself from that process of life and soul search and heal and figure out what I want to do with my life? And so I spent a year shifting between working at Portland Swimwear and then designing my own company, branding it, pushing it forward for a year. And best decision I ever made.
It sounds like you took on a lot of stuff really quickly. Was that a hard transition in and of itself? Trying to manage being a mother and your business and stuff like that. Like that sounds like a lot.
Hard. It's still hard. It's a challenge, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It's made me who I am. Every little bit of it. My son is great. He has a lot of patience and knows like what I'm doing. We talk a lot about the power of changing the world and the power of influence and making sure you are a positive influence. And he gets to see me like go out and do that while I teach dance classes. And so it's really good for him. I feel like he's just like a good soul. He's a humble soul for being a 7-year-old. So yeah.
That's great. How would you describe your parenting style with your kid?
Happy medium. My parents raised me and my 2 sisters with a whole happy medium vibe. We got in trouble when we got in trouble. My parents always explained to us why we were in trouble. There was never like a weird underlying, like there was always communication. So with him, I just always make sure to communicate. If there's something that happens during the day that isn't righteous that he did, things that 7-year-olds do, I don't know. I just check him on it, and I try not to get mad. I just check him and be like, bro, like you have a responsibility to yourself at the end of the day. I'm not always going to be here. I'll be here as long as I can, but it's my job to instill morals in you. And that's all we can do for our children at the end of the day. So I guess definitely like a happy medium, total parent style. I'm never here to like punish him, just here to teach him,
So how do you feel about physical punishment with kids?
I don't like it. I don't like it. I think that there's so many other ways that our kids can be in trouble, you know what I mean, and still learn. I don't feel like, whippings, I got them occasionally when I was younger, like not so much a whooping, but other things, I got banned to my room, and it wasn't the best situation, but I would get banned to my room occasionally, and I got grounded, and I didn't get to go to do things. But for him, I just want him to know that like every choice that he makes influences every second of his life, and to make good ones, Yeah.
It's funny how being forced to go into your room is a punishment when you're younger, and then suddenly it becomes amazing when you get older, right?
I know.
Like if somebody deadass told me, you have to go in your room for 24 hours, I'd be like,
fine.
Bet, that sounds great.
I'm gone. Yeah. I'm going to go hide in there. Yes. Most definitely.
So we were talking before this about finding positive solutions to the problems that are going on right now. What's like a good example for you about a positive solution that we can use?
Yeah. So with all the chaos happening in the world right now, it's important that we talk to each other. It's important that we communicate. If you hear something that you don't like from somebody, don't yell at them. Don't don't cause a scene, but instead just talk to them. If they're not educated about it, cool. Like, you can educate them about it, but there's no reason for us to be like, shitting on each other anymore. Like, we have to be the energy to drive the force of change, So for me, it's about talking about the solutions. I don't have all the answers for everything. I don't think anybody does, but we can sit down and formulate the answers. There's no reason for us to not. And I think I get frustrated with the media right now, and this is like a whole rabbit hole type of vibe I guess I'm going to take us down right now, but the media confuses me because they go on there and they talk about the problems that are happening in the world. I don't hear that many solutions. I hear we have these leaders that are trying to come up with solutions, but it's all negative. It doesn't actually drive change in any way, maybe a little bit here and there. But I feel like if we all just sat down and were like, what do we actually want to see in the world? What kind of changes need to happen? We could formulate a plan in a year, and slowly but surely start implementing that. And those changes would happen. But we have people in power right now who are not down for the people. They're not down for the cause. They're down for their drama, their crap, nonsense. It literally makes no sense to me what is happening on this planet. But what does make sense is being authentic, being soul-driven, and teaching the next generation that their responsibility to this planet is to figure out what they want to do individually, and then go out and plot. Find your people, organize, and shift consciousness. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is there's never a perfect solution. There's never just, oh, we can do this now and this will work amazingly and won't have a problem. No, there's always going to be an issue with something, and I think that's something that a lot of people fail to realize, is that they think just, like, if we go with this and this is going to be great. But no, you got to realize that you have to mitigate danger.
Yes.
And a lot of problem solving, at least from my personal experience, has been what solution mitigates the most danger in this,
Yeah.
But that's just me.
I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I just know that there's enough minds on this planet for there to be solutions. And I don't expect the older generation to give us the solutions. I feel like they're so trapped in their cycles that that's just going to be them until they're not here on this planet anymore. But I do understand the responsibility that we uphold, especially our generation. We're in such a weird time,
Yeah.
And right now is such a time for us to shine light on everything possible. So, a day at a time, the world will change. The solutions are there. We just need to be mindful of that and be aware of that and do what we have to do to change, for ourselves. If we change ourselves, then you can go out and help change a whole community if you want. But you got to be cool inside yourself. You have to know exactly what you're here to do, why you're here to do it, and then be responsible with that.
Yeah, and that's why I love the time that we're alive in, because the chaos is great.
It's great.
It's because it's like when things are so placid and so consistent and easy, that's when it forces you to just do the same thing over and over again. And when things are so going great, that's when people forget about the fight. And I think for me, that's something that is really important, is realizing that right now change is great, but also 5-10 years from now, when this is a memory, continuing to fight for these same causes, as opposed to forgetting them once the economy is better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't forget.
Yeah,
there's no time to forget. I was very afraid that with the protests, and shout out to all the incredible people, artists who are out there just on the front lines and making sure that happens every night. The organization process, I know, has probably been exhausting for a lot of people, but they keep going, they keep fighting. That's what we're here to do, and I am incredibly grateful. But I also have the same fears.
Yeah. What
happens in okay, let's say the protest lasts for another year. What happens after that? Mm-hmm. What's next? What are we doing next? And as artists, we can provide all the platforms in the world. We can make sure artists have a voice to shine, but at the end of the day, there needs to be an implemented plan of action. I don't know what that is, but I know that there's teams of people who can make that happen. And those shifts might take a while for us to get to a point where we're like, okay, yes, you know, we're the energy and we're the force that drives that. And I wonder how much longer that's going to take. But we can't go back to sleep. That's what I'm calling it. Like right now, we have there's enough energy out there for us to be well aware of what's happening. I've been well aware of what's happening since I was 9. You know what I mean? Probably even younger. And those cycles have continued to happen because there's been revolutions, and there's been energy poured into that. And then just like you said, you know, people stop. That action stops. And then the cycle continues. It repeats again. So if we can break it in this lifetime, then the next generation will have a better lifetime.
No, absolutely. And you helped organize a little event at a protest, right? Why don't you talk about that?
So I created an event called Cypher in the Park. It happened last Saturday. It was righteous. It was beautiful. We had, I want to say, 23 artists that were a part of it. We had pop-up performances for the first hour and a half, and the second hour and a half was 12 ciphering artists. And it was just such a vibe. It was so good. And it's for the people. It's to bring the community together. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Collective, but it is a group of artists that are trying to bring light and awareness, and bring all of the hip hop groups in Portland together, and provide platforms and provide opportunities, resources for the hip hop community. And our goal is to kind of shift the perspective in Portland. Like, there's a lot of hip hop groups. There's a lot of people doing things, which is beautiful. But just imagine if everybody was doing stuff together all the time. And I know, like, you know, people are doing stuff together. But imagine if everyone was doing stuff together, how much of a wave of energy that would change things, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of like make or break for a lot of scenes, right? You know, it's like you had New York, which started hip-hop, but so much division within that, and everybody beefing, and, you know, from different neighborhoods. I don't like that guy because he's from a different hood than I am, you know what I mean? And then you look at the difference between Atlanta, and Atlanta is a really good example of people, you know, like coming together. And when I get on, I'm gonna put my little brother on. That way he can have a, you know, spotlight to him.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's great, because that's a way that you see people thrive for longer.
Yeah,
you know?
Community based, more like family dynamic, just us elevating each other, uplifting. So yeah, it was really cool. We did Cypher in the Park. Want to have a showcase? Help me with that. Shella Moon and Nick at Purple Matter. It was so much fun. Friends of Noise, Andre Middleton, he provided all the sound equipment for that. It was great. Bren came and he helped with kind of making sure that the flow of the artists and the cypher went well. You know, it was really good. It was a good time.
So how are you involved in the collective? What's your role in that?
Yeah, so I guess my role is to make sure that people are coming together in unity, I suppose. So I feel like it's my responsibility to do a lot of the groundwork for the building process of the collective and make sure that there's individuals from all the groups coming to events, and that people are aware that maybe, you know, let's say the collective meeting is happening. We've had Music Portland there and the Recording Academy, and they're great resources for artists in Portland. But, you know, we've had them there to kind of help support and bring light to what we can do in Portland to help people. So I guess my goal with it is to make sure that everyone comes together. I guess that's it, the groundwork for it.
Yeah, and one thing that I always thought was interesting about like Portland hip hop is there's so many groups of people, to quote Zone, that are in their own little ideas and have no idea about each other. Right,
that needs to stop. Yeah, we should all know who everyone is at this point, you know. Seriously. And I meet new artists all the time. Like, I'm just like, you've been in the scene for 18 years? Like, what? And, you know, I've heard your name, of course. You know, I've heard your name, of course, but I don't think I've met you before. You know what I mean? So and you as well. Like, you know, it's just, so we need to meet each other. We all need to link up, and yeah, it's not hard to do. You know, I mean, with COVID right now, it's a little tricky, but we're still finding ways to shine our light and do what we got to do. So, yeah.
So I might be misinformed about this, but I saw recently that the Parks and Rec department were getting defunded. They were losing a lot of funding. You're probably not working with them currently, right? You used to be, but what's your perspective on that, on the city?
It sucks. It sucks because there's kids that need these resources, you know. Part of the reason why I feel like Portland Parks had me jump in and hired me was to help rebuild some of the programs that were not happening at the rec centers. So like I started working at Fabian Sun School. So that was my first job with Parks. And I mean, that experience in its own self was wild, but those kids need leaders, they need mentors, they need classes, they need after-school programs. So to even think about those things going away is just crazy. We were told, though, like, when I went back to work in September to start teaching again for the school year, we were told that those programs might not be there. And they were still there. So I guess I don't really know what happened with funding, and people weren't really talking to us about it, but I know that they're still striving for excellence and, you know, getting things back on board. And I know they had to, you know, remove people from sites, but they're trying to keep the best, you know what I mean, there and keep building their programs. So I don't know. I just, defunding programs for kids is just not necessary. You know, it's not, the kids need them. Yeah. That's all we're here to do, really, at the end of the day, is make sure that they're good, they're solid, that they're going to be able to lead by example in the future. And so I taught at Fabian Sun School, and then I was teaching at Matt Dishman as well, and Multnomah Arts Center. And both Multnomah Arts Center and Matt Dishman needed to rebuild their hip-hop classes, which is why they had me start teaching there. But it was great.
And is that something that you try to help with in your own dance instruction?
Oh, yeah. You know, there's so many little things you can do to lead by example in your classes. One of the things I do, a long time ago, 5 years ago, I suppose, I started using the crown emoji, like on a bunch of stuff on all my social media platforms, to try to help encourage the reminder that people are powerful, and like kind of the royalty aspect. But also, you know, if you post a crown on somebody's page or after a comment you leave, it's just like a little seed. It like plants a seed to remind them that they can do anything, you know? So in my classes, like when we would do floor stretches or whatever, I would like have the kids go like this, you know what I mean? And the parents that would sit in class, like I would see them kind of start catching on and being like, oh, that's actually cool, you know? That's a cool thing. And then that boosts confidence in the kids. And so there's just little things you can do to implement change. It's just, you know, kids love it and they need it.
Now, when you were working with the park department and stuff like that, have you always wanted to be involved with like helping kids and like helping shape their lives?
Yeah, my whole life. That's what I knew I was gonna do. I was on an amazing dance team called Fast Forward growing up. And when I got older, I was helping teach the same kids that I was dancing with. So that kind of sparked interest. I started choreographing my own dances when I was 10. They probably weren't that great, but they were fun, you know, and teaching them. And in high school, in order to graduate, I had to do a capstone. We had to do an hour-long presentation. So, of course,
Hour-long dance?
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, it was every senior in order to graduate had to do an hour-long presentation. And it was cool, though. It was a whole week. Kids got to get out of classes to go to the presentation. So it was a vibe. But, you know, you get up there to do your thing. You're 17, 18 years old. got to give this whole presentation on yourself. That was the whole thing. So you have to share your life, what you want to do, what your goals are, what you foresee your future to be. And then you have to share your art in some way. So I got up to teach a hip hop routine to 23 students that came to the capstone. And I mean, I already knew that I wanted to teach, which is why I did my capstone on it. But that sparked a whole thing for me. And I was like, okay, I for sure want to build a business in the future that supports this. So, yeah, and then I created my own dance team. I don't know if I said the name, but it's called Matinee Dance Team. So, yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about how in that year that you were working your job, you were balancing your job and trying to build that company. And when were you able? At what point did you realize you said I can finally jump into this company? Ground running.
Yeah.
What was that point like for you?
So I applied for a grant from the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods. And if anybody's trying to start a business, they're amazing. But people submitted their project ideas. And, we submitted ours. I had a couple other people on my team that were kind of helping me build that. And so we submitted the project, and I got first place. So
Nice.
They gave us $2,000, and I had a whole year planned out for how I was going to use the money and what I was going to spend it on. And so that was really the driven force was being able, the get-go, people allowing me to use a space. I spent $5,000 and bought the rollout dance mirrors. They're built out of Mylar fabric, so they're super lightweight. But buying those literally was such a great decision because I wanted to be able to provide a space, and I wanted it to be a pop-up space. So yeah, I just went. I went for a year. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. I just got up and went. I taught 1 day a week. I had 7 kids in my first program, and they got to do a couple performances. That was the time that I experienced my own first couple events, setups, and just rolled with the punches after that.
Nice. What are some things that the kids that you have taught, and maybe even your own child, that have taught you about how to live your life better?
Yeah, my kids teach me so much stuff every day. Definitely patience and, striving for excellence as a mentor. You're not only put in a spotlight, even on, so I started doing COVID precaution dance classes with my kids. I started 2 weeks ago. So literally our studio is outside right now. Thank goodness for the sun. I had to buy a contactless thermometer. So I got to do the whole weird sci-fi forehead temperature check. It's so weird. And, the kids wear masks, and there's 6 feet spaces. But even on Thursday when I just had class, my kids were we just look up to you so much, and we appreciate what you do. And, we are the way that we are because you've provided this platform for us, So it's just so important for me to remember at the end of the day, even when I'm having a horrible day, to remember that just even an hour of making sure that they're solid and teaching them dance changes their entire week, changes their perspective of their week, changes whatever family stuff is happening. They have a space to kind of leave all of that on the floor, dance their heart out, go home, and then they come back to the next class and they've learned so much. They've thrived in just a week, So I guess for me, everything that I've learned from them is remembering who I am,
How do you feel about schools coming back into session soon? Do you think that's a good idea? Or?
No. Nope. I do not. I think that we're going to have to design a new school system at this point. They're thinking about doing 2-day weeks right now with the kids, and having class sizes be really small and then splitting the weeks. I don't know how that's going to work for us working parents, because we got to make money. So it's weird, it's a weird system. Needs to be redesigned completely.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think about is, I don't know about you, but I would imagine it's hard to get kids to keep the mask on and like stay the 6 feet distance. Because I know when I was a kid, a lot of kids didn't even wash their hands.
Yeah, I know.
So it's
I
like
know.
trying to let kids know about that, I imagine would be hard. What's your experience with that like?
My kids have been cool with it. Like, luckily, most of my dance kids live in the same community. So like, we've been kind of around each other still since the beginning of COVID. And they've been just good about it. Like, it's, not really reminders. We've gotten to a point where the kids are well aware of what they're there to do during practice. And the 6 feet and the masks are just, sometimes they'll take the masks off if they're 6 feet apart. I'm like, that's cool. That's a choice that you're making. They're well aware of that. But they've been pretty good. We only had 2 classes so far, so we'll see how it goes. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a blessing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because I used to work with like elementary school age kids a lot, and that was one of the most rewarding things for me because I love working with kids. It's great. They helped me realize like joy. And that's one thing that has been my best experience with kids is, it's just you kind of forget about it and just like jump into their world and help them like build stuff, and it's very rewarding for me at least.
Very rewarding. Yeah, it's just a reminder.
Yeah.
That's all we're here to do, really. There's nothing else we're here to do. If I didn't have to make money and I could just literally just put my heart and soul into teaching dance classes, I would teach them everywhere. And I would make sure that, kids had a voice and the platforms to be able to do what they want to do. And I still do that. The money-making part, comes in between some of that stuff. And that's, then you have to find alignment between building your business, making money with your business. And then, I don't know, for me, being an artist and teaching dance is life for me. So, like, I had to get to a point also building a business, and I'm sure a lot of artists go through this, but you get to a point where you're humble and you're like, I'm doing this. I did teach for free for 2 years. I taught for free for 2 years. And then I started asking for money because I was terrified to ask for money. I was like, why would I ask for money for something I love to do? But eventually it was like, okay, you got to pay your bills. You have to pay your bills. And I did actually get to a point. So Andre Middleton, I don't know if you know who that is, but he runs Friends of Noise, and you should know him. He's awesome, and he would be great for this experience as well, just so you guys know. But him and I designed a program. I think it was last summer that we started building it, where we were gonna take my dance students and some of the other kids in the apartment complex to we were going to take them on a small tour, like a mini tour experience. And we had applied for a grant, got the grant money, and we were going to pay them. So, stipends. Like, you come to class, you make sure you're there on time, kind of teaching the professional development of that aspect. And then when they came to do the show, pay them some money, and kind of get that building part of being an artist ingrained, in them. And COVID stopped that from happening, but it's definitely something that we are going to come back to when we can.
So, living and growing up with your adopted parents, did you feel isolated from your culture of the, no?
No, not at all. Growing up in Beaverton, yes. Not a lot of culture when I was growing up out there for people that look like me. I definitely went to schools that were predominantly white kiddos, and beautiful experiences regardless. Definitely experienced touches of racism. Got called the N-word a few times, and got called out of my name a few times, and people talked about my hair, whatever. All lessons to be learned. I feel like I've learned so much being who I am. That stuff doesn't bother me at the end of the day. And I'm well aware that, and have been for years, that, we are all, this is weird to say, but souls that are encased in flesh meat bags, I see souls, not faces, and not bodies, and not all that stuff. So, school was weird. Being in Beaverton was a little weird. I didn't actually kind of touch base on my culture until I was 18 and, kind of jumped ship from Beaverton area and started gravitating more towards like North Portland, hanging out with people that look more like me. But that stuff doesn't matter to me at all. Never has. It doesn't stop me from being who I am. So it was weird being in school, but not really. And yeah, and like growing up with both of my adopted parents are white. So, but it was never weird, you know. I never really felt like I needed to know every piece of my culture to understand who I was, you know. We get to shape that. It's good to know. It's good to know your roots, know where you came from. But when you're adopted, you don't know growing up. So it's just like a different cycle of reality, I suppose. Definitely was cool to meet my birth family. My birth mother is white, and my birth father is Black and Native American. And they're just their own people doing their own thing. I have so much respect for them. But yeah, I never felt like that was missing. No, no, not at all.
What was meeting them like? Because you talked about meeting your aunt, right? Like, what was that like initial point of contact? Was it awkward or?
It was nerve-wracking. It was terrifying, but relieving all at the same time. When I left the trip, I, felt like the hole that I had my whole life was sewn up, and I got a lot of answers that I needed. I didn't feel like such, I guess kind of like the outsider aspect growing up wasn't from my adoptive parents, but it was from my birth family. And the lack of awareness and knowledge that I felt like maybe I could have had. And, you want to know. You want to know who gave birth to you. And you want to know, like, why they didn't choose to keep you. And so I got a lot of those answers and kind of like the underlining details of why my adoption took place. Also, I have a sister. Her name is Jill. Her and I are literally 11 and a half months apart. So it's a wild ride. Both of our birthdays are in August. Hers is August 10th, and mine is August 26th. So for 16 days, we are the exact same age every year, and it's so weird. But yeah, Jill came 11 and a half months after me, and my adopted parents adopted her as well. So she was always there. There was always a piece of my
that connection.
Birth family. Yeah. So definitely helped a lot.
Well, that's awesome. Did you ever deal with any like abandonment issues around that as you got older and kind of started being? Yeah.
I still definitely do, to be honest. It's weird. Like, being adopted is super weird, and you feel grateful that there was a family who did want to put the energy, time, and effort it takes to raise children. But yeah, it's weird. It's definitely kind of like it's not that they didn't want me, they just didn't have the resources. They weren't binded together enough to make it work. But I do look at my own situation with my son. I am a single parent, and as of recent. And, I look at my situation, and I was young. I had a kid, and I chose to keep him, I don't think that I would choose adoption, but I do see why it is so important, not everybody can raise children. People can try to raise children, but not every child ends up in the greatest situation. And I just think that, abandonment is a weird part of the journey. I don't know. Like, that's a hard question. Do people experience abandonment from other situations? Or, if you're not adopted and you have your family your whole life, do people still experience abandonment? Is that something?
Yeah, it's interesting because something I've seen with a lot of like really wealthy children growing up, they feel abandoned by their like father or mother, whoever like the breadwinner is, because they're always like so far off, like getting the resources for them in order to like live the like lavish life that they do, and they feel like this sense of like, oh, they don't care about me, when what they're doing is hopefully because they care about you.
Yeah.
And getting those resources. And it's always interesting for me to see that, like, no matter like what the situation is, everything is always, it's always so personal to yourself and your own experience. And at least for me, when you broaden your horizons and you take into account like everybody's experience and you get to look at that, like hopefully those wealthy children realize like, holy shit, that's fucking great that my parents were out there like, kicking ass so that I could live like the lavish life that I do.
Hustling.
That's what I'd hope their mindset would be. Oftentimes it isn't, which is unfortunate, but
it's super strange that it's not that way. I don't know. That's hard,
Yeah.
That's a hard question, but yeah, I definitely have some abandonment issues for sure from just life in general, but
yeah. Well, it's awesome that you can express those through dance and get to work through all those things, and that you help grow your community with the assets that you have, and are such an inspiration to that and to those kids, and it's awesome. Thank you for talking with me today. I know I've enjoyed this conversation a lot. It's definitely been enlightening, and as always, thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for watching. My name is R.E.B.E.L, Arii.grove. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Look me up, find me, listen to that new album that's out on Spotify and all those platforms. Ignorance, please check that out. And where can we find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Instagram at We Must Change, and also on Facebook at Kelsi Schnitter. My dance team's page is Matinee Dance Space on Instagram. So if you want to check that out, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.